Hello everyone. Did you know that Mega Man had two arcade games released in the 90s? Yep, there's two of them. There's Mega Man The Power Battle, released in 1997, and Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters, released in 1998. I'm going to review these games together, and I'll explain my reasoning later on in the video, but first I'll talk about my rubric for reviewing these games. When scoring these games, half of what I consider will be the modern fun factor. How much fun are these games to look at, to listen to, and play today? The other half of what I consider is the context the game occupies historically and within the Mega Man franchise as a whole, and where the game sits today in our modern gaming landscape. I'll also consider a little bit of my nostalgia and personal bias towards these games. I think to accurately examine if these games are worth your time and money today, the context should be weighed a little bit more heavy in this review. And again, I'll explain as I go. And I'll start with the context. Mega Man The Power Battle was released in Japan in the arcades in 1997. It's actually kind of hard to figure out if this game had an official arcade release in the US. I can find some arcades online, but I don't know if they're fan-made or if they're actually from Capcom. Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters was released worldwide in arcades in 1998, though again, it is very difficult to find the images of the actual arcade machines. And I'd love to know in the comments below if anyone has ever actually seen these arcade machines in the wild. These games are somewhat mysterious, and when I was younger, I actually heard about these arcade games, and they seemed very exotic and intriguing to me. And I'm not gonna lie, I still find these games mysterious and odd even today. Throughout the classic series of Mega Man games, player selection is a bit of a novelty, with Mega Man and Bass launching in 1998, being the only classic Mega Man game with a character selection until 2008's Mega Man 9 gave you the option to pick Proto Man, and Mega Man 10s has the special distinguishment of being able to allow players to pick between Proto Man, Bass, and Mega Man. But what makes the Power Battle so interesting is that in 1997, it actually offered players the decision to play as Proto Man, Bass, and Mega Man. I just find this to be really cool that they did this way back then in an arcade game. And it must have been really mind-blowing to players who got to experience this when this arcade first came out. Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters even raises the standard by having 4 playable characters available right from the beginning, by adding Duo the Robot to the roster of playable characters. To my knowledge, this is the only Mega Man game where you can pick between 4 playable characters, and I believe it's the only Mega Man game with Duo as a playable character. And I have a bit of a soft spot for him. I really liked him in Mega Man 8. I believe these games might be the only Mega Man games with multiplayer, which again adds a lot to the context and makes these games seem somewhat special within the series. These games offer something truly unique and strange in their relationship to the classic series. It's something very similar in aesthetics, but very different than the actual games. And I've got to mention that in our modern gaming context, these games are incredibly cheap. You can buy them for $1.99 each, and you can even get them cheaper when they're on sale. That's cheaper than buying an energy drink at the gas station. Now, this low cost makes me evaluate these games almost more like a rental. If you were someone that rented games as a kid, you know that feeling of picking a game for $2 on a Friday night, playing it for a few hours and having a good time, maybe playing it some more on Saturday before you had to return it. These games really kind of feel like that for me. Objectively, there's really not a lot of meat to these games unless you are for some reason really intrigued by the mechanics or want to master them, but there's enough going on here to definitely get you and a friend entertained for quite a few hours. And they really do feel like a great rental, with the added bonus is that they're actually just as cheap as a rental was back in the day. The games are pretty similar to each other, and that's why I consider them kind of both as a package. Together they're less than $5, and if you're interested in one, you're probably going to be interested in both. So that's the context. These games came out in the arcades somewhat mysteriously and are somewhat hard to find, and now they've been re-released at this incredibly low price point, offering some truly unique gameplay gimmicks within the Mega Man series, and they're directly tied to the classic Mega Man series in terms of the characters and overall aesthetic of the games. Now let's talk about the modern fun factor of these games. How much fun are they to actually look at, play, and listen to today? These games are essentially boss rushes. In Mega Man The Power Battle, you get 3 different routes where you can fight Robot Masters from Mega Man 1 through 3, 4 through 6, or Mega Man 7. And then the game randomly selects an island for you to fight them. In Mega Man 2, The Power Fighters, it presents these options a little bit differently, but ultimately it has the same outcome. At the beginning of the game, Roll has been kidnapped, and so once you pick your character, you get an option of chasing after Wily, looking for Roll, or looking for a missing robot part. Picking one of these three options gives you different Robot Masters, and then you get to directly pick the order that you fight them. The Robot Master fights here feel quite a bit different than they do in the actual classic Mega Man games, but they're still pretty fun. You still get the power of whoever you beat, but the powers that you earn from beating the Robot Masters run out really quick, so they're not really a guaranteed win if you link up the right Robot Master weapon with the right Robot Master. You can also get Rush as a charge attack in Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters. I'm not really sure how I did this, but it's fun. You can charge at Mega Man's blast, and then Rush will charge in at the enemy as well. I've also got to briefly mention that in Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters, each of the characters has a special move. Mega Man can do like the Shoryuken Dragon Punch, and Bass can do Guile's Flipping Kick. It's really cool, it's pretty easy to pull off, and definitely adds more value to the game as well, over the first game, Mega Man The Power Battle. Now, just generally speaking, the controls here are pretty similar to a typical Mega Man game. You can shoot, you can charge up your shot and release it to shoot a more powerful attack, and you can also jump and slide on the ground. Duo and Bass seem to more launch themselves along the ground than slide. Mega Man, Proto Man, and Bass are pretty similar to each other, and it's notable that Bass doesn't have the machine gun firing style. His firing style is more similar to Mega Man and Proto Man. Duo, on the other hand, controls completely differently. He has a punch attack, and honestly, he kind of sucks. He's not the best character to play as, but the novelty of having him in the game is still really cool to me, and he just looks so cool, and I liked playing as him, even though he just wasn't as much fun to use. I found someone to play Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters with me for a little bit, and I think ultimately that's the best way to approach the game. Again, it's kind of like a rental. If you can find a friend to play these games with you and to really kind of try your best together at these games, it can be fun. We didn't try to really master these games, but if you wanted to try to 1cc these games, just get from the beginning to the end, it's quite the challenge. That being said, if you're willing to use a couple credits, the game is quite easy for an arcade game, especially in multiplayer. I think if I was playing this like a quarter every single time to get a credit, it wouldn't take, much more than $1 or $2 to get through the whole game in the arcades, especially if you're working together with a friend. Now, the presentation here is a bit of a mixed bag. It stylistically looks closest to Mega Man 7, I would say, and there's a lot of cool animations and bright colors, and the backgrounds are really detailed and interesting. But the backgrounds are recycled amongst different Robot Masters depending on which route you take, and sometimes it just doesn't actually make sense why you're fighting some Robot Masters in some different settings. It's also worth mentioning that at times the background and the enemy attacks can get really cluttered. It's not as meticulously designed as the classic games, and I think it's deliberately meant to be a little bit cheaply difficult, especially towards the end with the Wily fight. Mega Man The Power Battle, the first game of the two, has a general ugliness to it in the sprite art, especially in the cutscenes. It doesn't look great, which is especially disappointing considering that Street Fighter Alpha started around the same time, and this game looks nothing comparable to that. Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters looks just all around better. The colors are more vibrant, the animations seem to be a little more fluid, the backgrounds seem to be a little more pretty, and the sprite art in between levels just looks way better and way more polished. Visually, the standout, the most beautiful part of the game is the Yellow Devil fight, which there's a Yellow Devil fight in both of these games, and in both of these games, it just looks really cool. It's very fluidly animated, even though the attacks are quite a bit different than what you see in the classic games. Now, just to more broadly sum up the gameplay, just to give you an idea of how it feels to play these games, you'll pick which character you're going to play as, then you'll pick a route, then in the first game you'll get a random Robot Master, in the second game you'll pick your Robot Master, and then you fight them. The fights are pretty fast-paced. The Robot Master is not particularly difficult if you know their patterns, especially if you've played the classic games. The patterns aren't the same, but it's the same kind of learning curve. It does seem just generally a little less polished all around. Like I said, it can be hard to see things that are attacking Mega Man and differentiate those attacks from the background, but it's still fun and still very approachable. You get the Robot Master weapons, and you can use the right Robot Master weapons to attack the enemies. They just run out a lot quicker. There wasn't any enemies that I was able to just completely obliterate with the right Robot Master weapon like I could in the classic series, though you can get a big advantage by using the right Robot Master weapon. between picking different characters and picking different routes, there's actually quite a bit of variety if you really want to sink your teeth into this game and see all that it has to offer. Though, again, with the backgrounds being recycled, there's not as much here on offer as you might expect. Now, there are different endings depending on which characters you use to beat the game. I did not see all the endings of both games, though I did beat both games a couple times. Mega Man the Power Battle has this really strange ending where Mega Man contemplates world peace with Wily, and then Otto the robot has a fan. It's kind of cute, but nothing spectacular. Mega Man 2 the Power Fighters has a really strange ending with Mega Man, where Wily and Mega Man have this little dialogue, and Mega Man begins to think that maybe he's just as bad as Wily, and he despairs, and then his friends just talk him out of it, and he realizes, sometimes you have to destroy robots to save the world, which kind of contradicts the lore, because I thought that the robot masters that Mega Man destroyed were rebuilt, but I don't know. The standout ending of the whole thing, though, is that if you beat Mega Man 2 the Power Fighters as base, and this is a major spoiler, so if you're planning on playing these games and getting all the endings, you might want to be surprised by this, because as a Mega Man fan, this is a really cool ending, so just to let you know. If you beat Mega Man 2 the Power Fighters as base, you get a really cool ending where it talks about how Wily created some energy called Basium that powers Base, which is really strange. You learn a little bit more about their relationship, how Base has contempt for Wily, and Wily has decided to build a new robot to help him take over the world. And this new robot is pretty clearly Zero from the Mega Man X series. It's a silhouette, so you don't actually see the details of Zero, but you can see his ponytail, and the general shape is definitely him. And I just found that to be mind-blowing. It's really cool. This is a direct link between the classic Mega Man series and the X series, if these games are canon, which I'm not 100% sure they are, but I think they are, and I just found that to be a really cool and exciting ending. Now, especially if you don't know that's coming, which sorry if I just ruined it for you, it's pretty cool. It's really cool, and even seeing it here, it's probably worth, if you're a Mega Man fan, just playing through the game yourself as base and just kind of experiencing it and kind of imagining you're in an arcade in the 90s and you're a Mega Man fan and seeing this link between the series. It's just really cool stuff. So overall, I'm just going to do a combined review score for these games. I'm just going to say that it is a 7.5 out of 10, and I would call it an especially good rental. Are these the kind of games that I'm going to go back to and play again and again, or are these the kind of games with a lot of depth and nuance to be discussed? No, there's really not a lot of depth to them, again, unless you want to master some of these specific mechanics, like a specific arcade style kind of game. Now I want to add, with my final score, I am really considering these games more in terms of how I would evaluate a good rental. If you saw my ranked list of the classic Mega Man games, I would say that I had more fun in terms of hours of fun with any of the classic Mega Man games, even the ones at the bottom of that list, than these two fighting games. But I think if you are expecting just something that's just going to take up a few hours and just be a good evening, these games are awesome. Now, they're not really something you could sink your teeth into and revisit unless, again, you really get into these specific arcade mechanics. But for me, as a Mega Man fan, I do like all of the classic games better than this game. I'm just giving this game a number-based score, really evaluating it more as a rental, as something that's really cheap and can take up a few hours. There are different routes, but ultimately, there's not really a lot on the table here if you do different routes. And the general kind of laziness in the presentation, particularly with the backgrounds, doesn't make these games necessarily worth replaying in every single possible route configuration with every character. But if you consider the price, if you consider the general mysteriousness and obscurity of these games, I think they're definitely worth playing, definitely worth picking up for a Mega Man fan. If you know someone who's a Mega Man fan and they're willing to play this with you, this would be just a great Friday night. Just pretend like you're back in middle school and you're renting a game for the night. That would make them just, feel really fun and exciting. And the lore connection to the X series, I think, really makes these games stand out. So there you have it. That's my review of Mega Man the Power Battle and Mega Man 2 the Power Fighters. Let me know in the description below if you agree with me, if you think these games are good or terrible or somewhere in between. And also, if you've seen one of these arcade machines out in the wild, please let me know. Or if you have more direct information about whether or not these were ever released commercially in the States, I would love to know. It's surprisingly harder to figure out than I thought it would be. So thanks again for watching. Thanks for all the likes and subscribes and comments that I've gotten. All the support means the world to me, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye.